Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Jen with one N. And if you're like me, you're watching Atheist Edge.
Some Christians do not have a literal interpretation of the Noah's Ark story. They argue that the story is an allegory and the flood was a localized event. Oh, the birds, to round up all the birds. Well, if it was a localized flood, why did God order the birds be rounded up? They could have flown into out of the local area to
Right.
safety. It's not mincing words here. It means the entire earth. How do you respond to a Christian, let's say a progressive Christian, that says, "Oh well, most of the Bible is just allegory and metaphor, but I believe in God, but I don't really believe all those stories in the Bible."
Well, when we're doing street epistemology, we want to try to go where people take us. So, yes, we'll run into some Christians who say the Bible is the infallible word of God and every word in there is accurate. And even though we can't make sense of it, it's the truth. And that's just on us to figure out what's going on. And then you get the extreme. People say, I don't even read the book, or it doesn't even really matter what's in the book. I've got this personal relationship with Jesus or God.
You handle it the same way. I mean, you don't pull your punches when someone is more progressive and says, they just feel it in their heart. You
Oh,
that will
no,
take you in a different direction.
the direction will change, but the way that I proceed by asking questions and listening and repeating back, which is what we do in street epistemology, that's all the same. It's kind of neat with street epistemology. You don't even need to know much in the Bible or those verses. You don't have to be well versed in the verses because it's the person that you're speaking with who has the belief that they generally think to a high degree of confidence that it's true. So it's just important to recognize what they think or what they say is bolstering their belief and then go with it. So if I met a progressive Christian who didn't really care about evolution or the flood or anything at all like that, it doesn't matter. Like I just wouldn't talk about those things. In fact, it could be a problem if I was really well versed in the Bible and I wanted to talk about Noah's Ark and that type of stuff. If I was forcing reasons or surfacing reasons that had no bearing at all on this person's view, that could actually cause the conversation to shut down. It's like pouring sand into the gears of a conversation. Why would I want to bring up something that isn't a factor in their own views? So it's really important to identify what's propping it up and go where they take you.
Your method would not allow, it's non-confrontational. So if they said, I believe the literal flood story as written, there would be you don't have a method for pushing back at that using what I just, any of these 5 bullet points. You wouldn't say, well, here it says in the Bible this.
It's nuanced. So before
Yeah.
I would give them verses to show that they were wrong, I would ask them a few questions to see if I think they're ready for those verses. And that's the thing that we don't normally do when we're engaging with theists. We assume they have this view. I've got these wonderful verses to show that they're wrong. All I need to do is give them the verses and they'll accept it and change their mind. They're going to probably find a way to discount those verses, or like we were talking about earlier, that story may not even have any bearing on why they think their God is real in the first place. So you can be spending all these time spinning your wheels on things that are not a factor in their conclusion. You got to go where they take you.
Jesus' real name is Joshua. Jesus comes from the Greek Yeshua, however the original Hebrew origin is Yehoshua, which translates to Joshua. This was one of the most common names during that time period, shared by thousands in Galilee. So this is one of the reasons why it's so hard to determine if the Jesus of the Bible actually existed, because we have some references of a man named Joshua in some ancient texts, very few, but they exist, but it's very hard to determine whether it's the same person because there were so many people wearing that name at that time. So it might also be a case of fusion between mythical and real persons. Like King Arthur, for example. King Arthur from the Arthurian legends, he's a mix of true and mythical characters, and so it could be very well the same for Jesus, that he's a mix between some older characters in like the Epic of Gilgamesh, and also someone who really existed and on which was imposed this magical essence. So I don't think we'll ever be able to determine whether the Jesus of the Bible was real, but I don't really think it matters, because all these magical powers he has, like the resurrection, like the walking on water, like multiplying bread and fish, all that hasn't been proven to be true. In fact, we have evidence of the opposite. We know how death works, and we know that someone who was actually dead for 3 days cannot be revived. We know that humans cannot walk on water. We know that we cannot multiply fishes and bread from one single instance of each. So I don't think this debate about the historicity of Jesus needs to end, but I really don't see the point of it, because there is not enough information to determine whether he was real or not. The only interesting part is whether the magical powers that he supposedly has in the Bible are true or not, and they're not.
In 2014, the Supreme Court held that businesses with religious objections to birth control, such as arts and craft retailer Hobby Lobby, may refuse to provide contraceptive care in their health plans. But go take a gander at Hobby Lobby's shelves full of merchandise made in godless communist China, with a controversial record of mandatory sterilizations, abortions, and infanticide. As a side note, Hobby Lobby's employee health plan used to include birth control until Obamacare began requiring it. This is about politics, specifically right-wing politics against President Obama and his landmark legislation.
Of the roughly 4,200 religions on Earth, the most popular one has approximately 41,000 different denominations. The disparity in proliferation is not the gift or benefaction of an omnipotent deity, but rather the result of humans and their fear of death and the unknown. I look at it this way. You can see how religion would have formed throughout history. If you start with early man, back hunter-gatherer days, they see cause and effect. I stab the deer dies. I stab this rival, the rival dies. Cause, effect. However, for things like illness and weather and natural disasters, they saw the effect and thought there must be something bigger that is the cause, something unseen and unknowable. And I believe that started off as more of a Aboriginal Native American spiritual type of religion, which eventually evolved into the polytheism you see in the Celts and the Egyptians, the Romans, the Greeks, and so on. And then eventually the monotheism we have of today. There, to me, I've always seen a clear line there of evolution, if you will.
An advanced and tolerant society cannot afford to allow hatred and intolerance. Philosopher Karl Popper said it best in his Open Society and Its Enemies. Quote, "Less well known is the paradox of tolerance. Unlimited tolerance must lead to the disappearance of tolerance. If we extend unlimited tolerance even to those who are intolerant, if we are not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed, and tolerance with them." End quote. That seems intuitively obvious, and yet some people overlook it in the notion that, oh, well, you're not being tolerant. Well, frankly, I'm happy to admit that I am not tolerant of bigots. I'm happy to have conversations with them. I'm happy to try to correct them in their views, but I'm not going to tolerate them as a part of society. Oh, don't get me wrong. They're a part of society and they have their free speech rights to express their horrific ideas. But that doesn't mean I need to be tolerant of the ideas. And if I'm talking about individuals who are not willing to work together toward a tolerant community, then I don't need to tolerate their intolerance. The fact that we don't have to tolerate everything does not make us inferior with our tolerance. It makes us superior with our tolerance because we recognize that even tolerance can and should have limits.
The Bible doesn't prohibit birthday celebrations, so what justification do Jehovah's Witnesses have for prohibiting the practice? First, deaths occurred at the only 2 birthdays mentioned in the Bible. Second, the desire to die and be with God is more honorable than being born. This is a gross mistranslation of Ecclesiastes 7:1. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth.
Okay, the one line that bothers me in this is the desire to die and be with God is more honorable than being born. I don't know about the wording of that, mainly because I don't think many Jehovah's Witnesses actually think they're going to go and be with God in the way that most religious people would say that, which is to go to heaven. There's a lot of, with that wording, you could easily think that means, you're better off to die and go to heaven. I don't know. I think it's the wording that gets me, and that's only because I'm being, triggered as an ex-J-dub that would sort of be triggered by that wording, so. Yeah. There is a lot of truth to the first part though, like where the birthdays weren't notable for many good or any good characters of the Bible. They were celebrated by characters that were considered as not a good influence, and they had horrific deaths at those birthdays as well. They would also cite things like, the apostles and Jesus and all that, they never were said to celebrate their birthday. So, that's another reason that they wouldn't. The desire to die is better than being born kind of thing isn't really something that you would ingrain early on when, birthdays are actually important to a person. So I can't imagine that being actually something often used. But it'd be there. It'd be one of the many reasons.
Yeah. And what that turns into is distancing of the J-dubs from reason,
Society.
from society. And that's really all it's about. It's not about anything.
Well, straight. One of the scriptures there somewhere is we are to be no part of mankind or something like that. Like we're to be nothing to do with the rest of y'all.
Yeah. So basically what that means is that making people who are Jehovah's Witness not celebrate in something that the average person in society celebrates makes them a loner, and it throws them out of society. And that is a way to use to control people, because only people who are Jehovah's Witness don't have this celebration. And it just makes it more uncomfortable for people who are Jehovah's Witness to participate in society. And that causes quite a lot of emotional distress for kids as well, because, they can't participate in the fun stuff. And it also separates people from their workers, as like work colleagues and things like that, because they can't go to the work Christmas party. They can't celebrate in a workmate's birthday party. And that's considered to be rude in a lot of people's, in our society nowadays. So, yeah.
According to the Bible, there are multiple gods.
Now, to me, this had to do with a lot of them knowing the good men who wrote the Bible. This has a lot to do with them knowing that there were other holy scripts out there in competition with theirs while they were making them. Because a lot of their stories they got from other holy texts, from other religions. A lot of the Holy Bible stories you can read. If you read more than just the Holy Bible, you can pretty much tell that they were modifying these stories to make them fit their holy book. So to me, it was just in competition. They got a lot of ideas from all the other holy texts. Another reason that you know it's just men across the world writing bullshit.
Don't overthink things, baby. You've been a stranger lately. 'Cause I know that you do, and I know that's not you. Let's keep it fun and simple. Easy come, easy go. Don't overthink things, baby. You've been a stranger lately. 'Cause I know that you do, and I know that's not you. Easy come, easy go. It's no sweat, it's no sweat. 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 It's no sweat, it's no sweat.
Pope Francis said there's 8,000 pedophiles that are currently employed by the Catholic Church worldwide. This harboring of sexual abuse needs to end. This is an issue that will continue if people are not actively talking about the sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. The fact that the Church has and will keep secrets to protect the image of their organization makes the Church untrustworthy. The immoral practices show that the Church's idea of a God is not able to keep their members safe, with the Church attempting to cover the indiscretions. If the clergy was supposed to be a representation of morality, it failed tragically. It is clearly documented the tradition of sexual abuse that is in the Church's history. The clergy should no longer be revered as special people, for they are just regular people like everyone else. Clergy members have no supernatural powers, like in what I call some horror films as church propaganda that depict priests doing exorcisms, banishing some fictional demons from a person. Members of clergy don't have magical spells to keep anyone safe. Keeping this topic in the public's mind is important to help mitigate the damage the Church will most likely continue to perpetuate.